Hey, welcome to my house. I'm AC and I'm super excited today. What a pleasure to have in my live stream is a person that I look up to, someone who I feel like recognized the same dearth of humor in the personal finance space. And so he's doing his part to bring personal finance and budgeting and investing entertaining. This is, it, I've read so many books that are just textbook books, right? Personal finance. I try to get my friends and family tuned in on budgeting and understanding money, and the books were so boring. Well, that sort of got me into the space saying I'm going to write a funny real estate book. And Joe Saul-Sehy is the guy here who wrote a funny book himself. It's right here called Stacked: Your Super Success the Super Serious Guide to Money Management. I'm so excited to have Joe in the studio. We're going to pick his brain, ask questions. But everyone who wants to listen to podcasts, the number one podcast out there, I'm going to say, I've got good goals for my podcast, but this guy is the Michael Jordan, the LeBron James of personal finance podcast, Stacking Benjamin's podcast, always entertaining, always informative, and this is great. So come with your questions, and let's get started. And let's welcome Joe Saul-Sehy to the studio. Welcome, Joe.
Dude, how are you, Alan?
Good.
Great to hang out with you again. By the way, stop with all the accolades. Stop.
Well, yeah, no problem. Well, I've had guests on my show who heard me on your show, so
that was fun. And we gotta reprise that too. We gotta get that.
That'd be great.
We gotta get that going again.
I mean,
yes.
And in fact, keeps inviting me over, but not for the podcast. I mean, not that sounds inappropriate. But she's friendly, cheat.
Yes,
but yeah,
make some cookies and watch Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yes,
I could do that.
Absolutely.
Well, congrats on your new book, Stacked.
Thanks, man. It's so weird to see. You know what the bad news is about that book, Alan, is that I have the same editor. I have the same editor as James Clear, Atomic Habits, James Clear.
Yeah.
It's the same input. It's the same editor. And the bad news is I think it's about every 12 minutes, she talks about how awesome James Clear is. And you know how mom says that comparison is the thief of joy.
Right.
Like it is so bad. She's like, well, here's what James did. Here's what James did. So I'm like, oh, so I'm the, there's a favorite child in every family.
Right.
I get the feeling when you're in the same family as James Clear that you just can't keep up. You're like, yeah. For anybody that hasn't read Atomic Habits, it's a great book.
I got to say, I was trying to think of one word to describe your book, and I kept coming back to refreshing. It was just a refreshing book. Like it's jam-packed with content. It's enjoyable, it's entertaining, and you also do a great job of the pros and cons of every argument and saying this is why I think investing in this product is great, and then you're like, this is why I don't think it's great, and you really leave it up to the reader to choose what direction to go with. They're getting educated about their money, and you're putting sort of the choices in their lap, and I just found it very, very refreshing. Yeah.
Thanks, man. I mean, it is hard. If you think about it, the personal finance section of any bookstore is full of people that have an axe to grind, as you know, from a guy that has a successful brand of your own. Like finding these people that are in what you do with real estate who aren't slimy, is difficult. It's the same with the stock market. It's the same with trading. It's the same with crypto. It's the same with, so the cool news is I don't have an axe to grind. I was a financial planner for 16 years. I haven't been one for 12. My goal was to make a book that was actually, and this is kind of a funny story, Alan, I wanted a book that I carried around, like I carried around in fourth grade, my brother and I carried around the Hardy Boys Detective Manual. Right. And this was the original idea for the book, was that when fourth grade, I wanted to be a detective. It was written with the help of a real true life FBI detective. And, my dad would pull out for work on a rainy day. And my brother and I, the second the rain ended, we'd be out there looking at the tire tracks because the book showed us how to do that.
That's
And
awesome.
then my mom would touch a doorknob and we'd immediately go over with the tape because you don't know where mom's been. And I thought, as I saw this book, I was at Powell's bookstore, which is a wonderful bookstore in Portland, Oregon. When I was in Powell's and I saw this book, I thought, man, if there were a book that people could carry around lovingly like that's kind of campy, that has a lot of fun, but also has, the good stuff in there, that would be great. Then I came home and my mom actually had a key to our house. And when I was living in Detroit at the time, and she left me all this stuff. I was 50 years old at the time. She finally leaves me all that stuff that's in her attic because she can finally trust me with it because I'm 50. And so in this, besides my little league pictures and that, father-son bowling trophy with my dad and I, there was the Cub Scout Wolf Guide. And one thing that you and I know really well is that gamification is a great key to success. Like for you, the great part about your story that I absolutely love is you gamified, hey, I want to pay this bill, then I want to pay this bill. Like it became a game for you to get all your bills
100%,
covered, right?
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
And the Cub Scouts were doing gamification way before all these cool people with apps on our phone. So, because every chapter was instead an achievement. So if you're reading Stacked, you'll see that there's every chapter is an achievement. It's set up like the Cub Scout Wolf Guide. So when we were actually, my co-author Emily and I were doing this, we're talking about this project with different publishers. Our Zoom call, because it was right in the middle of COVID, was always, okay, so here's what we want to do. We want to take the Hardy Boys Detective Manual.
Got it. Yeah.
And we want to combine it with a Cub Scout Wolf Guide but make it for adults about money.
Right.
And I was so surprised that none of these editors hung up on us.
Well, they saw the vision, it came to fruition. It's a great book. You get your little badges at the end. And that's exactly how I like to approach personal finance. It's a combination of goal, right? Setting a goal for yourself. Because if you're not tracking, then you'll never get there, right? Because then you just start taking wandering paths, and you never know where you end up. But then you also do a good job, or like part two of that is once you set your goal, you reverse engineer from there and sort of say, okay, if that's your goal, how are we going to? What are the steps to get there?
Yeah. Well, here's the reason you do that is that what you and I know is people get really freaked out about all the different types of investments that are available. I mean, because there's so many. And instead of that, because I get that question all the time, like, what's the right investment for you? What do you think about this investment? What do you think about that? And it's funny because it's not about whether it's a good investment or not. It's actually, is it the investment that's going to reach your goal? And if you start there, if you start with your goal and work backwards, instead of thinking about all these different investments, now I can think about just the few things that reach my goal. And instead of wasting time on all this junk that doesn't really matter, I can be very focused on the few things that matter and then get good at them. So for you, it was real estate, and you were able to drill down then in that. You're not wasting time on 5 million investments that don't fit what Alan wants to do. You're focused on just the few that make it. And so it gets rid of FOMO. And the other thing that's cool about that approach is that now it's okay. An investment can be a good investment. You don't have to say it's a bad investment. You can go, that's a good investment. It just isn't for me. And you can let it go, not because it's bad, but let it go because it's good. It just doesn't fit, which is awesome.
Yeah. So yes. So that brings me to the point in your book where you're saying Dave Ramsey doesn't follow his own advice. I love how you say that because a lot of these advice for everyone, one size fits all advice. It's diversification. It's don't leverage, don't take any risk. And what I'm hearing now, again, which is very refreshing from a personal finance author and podcaster, is it's okay to have some concentration, specialize in something. Is that what you're saying, or am I putting words in your mouth?
Yes. No, absolutely. There's a chapter near the end of the book. The book starts off very basic and gets more complex as you go. So think about, once again, the Cub Scouts. It starts off with the easy badges, and then you've got the tougher ones later on. And when we talk about strategic underdiversification, I think that's a pretty important concept, because there's two different things. Number one is a CFP will never tell you to underdiversify your investments. And there's actually two reasons for that. Number one, you could go broke under diversifying your investments. And think about Dave Ramsey as a great analogy. And I'm glad you brought him up, because look at Dave. Twice he under diversified. The first time he went with real estate, he got over leveraged and he nearly washed out. Right.
Right.
But he came back and the one key thing was he stayed under diversified. He didn't get rich diversifying things. He got rich with one company, and this one took off and did really well. So it could be really bad, or it could be really good, but by strategically under diversifying part of your portfolio, you can get where you want to go much more quickly. Now, CFP is not going to tell you that, because there's also the opposite side.
Right.
If you're wrong, it could go very bad. It could go very, very bad.
So CFP, certified financial planner, what you used to be, right? Yeah. And so, yes, the safe bet is diversification, right? And that's the way to preserve wealth. Let's have not all your eggs in one basket. And obviously, you could skyrocket to wealth if you are heavily invested in one sector and that takes off. But a lot of times you don't have the ability to make a sector take off. Like, a lot of it's just luck, right? And a lot of wealth, quick wealth, which unfortunately a lot of people want that quick wealth and they're not willing to do the hard work, is asymmetrical bets. There's some studies out there that say it's not against, it's actually wise financial, policy to buy a lottery ticket every now and then. You at most lose $1. And if you happen to win, you get millions of dollars, right? It's so asymmetrical, and it's not going to disrupt the rest of your portfolio. Now, if you did the reverse, if you were putting millions of dollars in the lottery, then that would be,
oops.
It would be a lose-lose, most likely. And it's not very asymmetrical anymore. And so it's really making those asymmetrical bets. We got a couple comments already. Podcast Editing Plus says that's a rough competition. James Clear.
It is.
And then
it is. I groan all the time. I've been lucky. We've had James on our show a couple times, and he's a brilliant dude. And if you haven't read Atomic Habits, you should.
Yeah.
But I don't like that comparison.
Secondly, TJ trips and falls on the stairs, rushing down to the basement to listen to you, Joe, today. So please.
That's good. Thank you. Thanks, TJ.
Yeah.
We have a lot of, well, as you know, when you and I had a ton of fun, we really wanted to be entertaining, because, and this might be a good topic that TJ kind of brings up, is that a lot of money nerds, Alan, we want to have these deep conversations. And if we're in any type of relationship, I find that often, and this is a question money nerds ask all the time, is how do I get my spouse, my significant other, my friends involved in this, whether it's the FIRE movement or just financial independence or just competent money management? How do we have these conversations? And I'll tell you, for me, I think you got to keep it light. Because if you keep it light, you can then have the deep conversations later. But if you start off with, "Hey, Alan, how about you and I go down this deep rabbit hole that of whatever the topic might be," most people aren't going to want to do that. They're like, no. And because of that, people generally do nothing because they think it's going to be deep. They think it's going to be not fun. And one thing that Cheryl and I did, we set a timer. We have a meeting once a week, and we set a timer. It's 20 minutes long, and it's always, Alan, it's always over pancakes or wine, depending on the time of day. And when the 20-minute timer ends, the meeting's over. And I'll tell you what we do. It's very simple. We just scroll through all of our expenses we did the week before.
Yeah.
And then we we talk about the expenses we're going to have the next week. That ends up invariably leading to some bigger conversations about big expenses coming, like we're going to Jordan and Egypt in May. So it leads to some of these bigger conversations, but we shut it off at 20 minutes. And I'll tell you what happens. Those deep conversations then happen organically during the week. And I'm not the one bringing it up. Cheryl is.
And Cheryl's
She's
your
like,
wife.
hey,
Yes.
yeah. While we're doing it, we should have that. So,
I love
keep
that.
keep it light.
Yeah, because it can be a polarizing conversation, especially with your partner. It could be, shocking if someone does something that you don't agree with, but it gives you time to process it. I love the 20 minutes thing. And also I love pancakes and wine. So it all goes together.
You don't even like the either or. You like both.
Right. You might be onto something here. Pancakes and wine.
Two great tastes that go great together.
Well, to me, with the difficult thing about making it light, sometimes bringing humor into the personal finance space, is that I feel like sometimes I had this struggle when I wrote my first book and really had to rework a lot of chapters because I thought I was giving great advice, and then I'd follow that advice with a joke, which basically belittled that advice and it undercut it, and then maybe like, wait a minute, like, but that's really good advice. I want you to understand that I can't make a joke that puts down that advice. Right. And so I had to come up with like other, like almost analogies. You do a good job of that and metaphors and such to explain a point, to really bring humor into the space.
Well, if you see the only negative reviews, and I told Emily, my co-author, this before we started, is that, as you know, humor is hard and people don't like the same humor. And so I told Emily ahead of time that this is being a little bit of a campy project, and we're going to try to have a lot of humor in it. There's going to be people that aren't going to like that. And if you look at, there's a ton of great reviews about my book, and there's 3 negative ones. And each one is, this book is not funny and I wish they stopped screwing around, which, by the way, is the same. If you look at any negative reviews about my podcast, it's the same thing with my podcast. They screw around too much. It's not so, you're not going to get everybody. And really, when somebody has been a money nerd for a long time, they're just looking for, just give me the nugget I haven't heard of before. I'm not for you. Like that's not my role to play, is to get people interested in this topic that maybe aren't interested yet. So maybe, like, if you're hanging out with Alan and I, maybe this isn't for you. Maybe this is that introduction for you to hand to the person that isn't interested in this topic.
Yeah.
Because that's the person. That's the person that I'm after.
Yeah. We're after the same audience. Yeah. It's the person.
Let's widen this community.
It's not so serious. We're not going to go so deep that, like, you have to have an MBA in business to understand, different financial concepts and economies across the world and stuff like that. Yeah. So I love that part. I want to, you made me think of something differently. I've never did a deep dive into this, but you've changed my mind on target date mutual funds. You want to sort of explain how you describe that?
I get a bad rap for this because of the fact that so many people are so pro target date mutual fund. And I think it's my job not to be pro target date fund. And by the way, and I just got done talking to somebody an hour ago who was telling me, they're like, target date funds are fantastic for the person that doesn't want to handle this, is never going to handle it. They'll diversify their funds and they just let it go. But if my position really is, if this is what my position is, and I'm going to be congruent in my life and my approach, that this is easier than you think, it doesn't take that much time, then I should be negative on the target date fund. Like that person should not exist who isn't going to do anything. Like, if you're not going to do anything, I think you're making a big mistake.
Right.
Because of the fact, and I'll get to the target date fund thing in a second, but I think this is an interesting point too, that you when you go work out, like you go and you work out, you have to consistently keep working out to keep muscle mass, right? To keep moving. When I train for a marathon, I can't train for 2 days and then try to run 26 miles. I got to keep doing it.
Right.
But the cool thing is, though, what you and I do with money, if you take 30 minutes one time and work on your money, that 30 minutes will have a lasting impact forever. Like, you don't have to do it every day.
Yeah.
And every single time you do it has this little tiny thing that it does. So why not take 30 minutes and learn how to diversify your portfolio yourself? But let me tell you what I don't like about target date funds. There's a few things. Number one, you familiar with Tony Bourdain? The chef, Kitchen Confidential guy. I love Tony Bourdain, and obviously I was so sad when he passed away, but like a lot of people, but Tony in his book, Kitchen Confidential, talks about why you shouldn't go to the Sunday brunch. And I don't know if you read that.
Well, first of all, I want to say, are you on a first name basis and calling him Tony? Because I've only heard people call him Anthony. So you may have a different relationship with the ship. Yeah.
I've always called him Tony Bourdain.
I don't know. Okay. Maybe you guys are more casual in your relationship. I know him as Anthony Bourdain. Yeah. So, okay.
Actually, I call him Tone.
T-Bone. Yeah.
Yeah. But he's got this great chapter called Eat Before You Read This. And he talks about why you don't eat the Sunday buffet. You don't go to the Sunday buffet. And the reason you don't is because the Sunday buffet is the chef cleaning out the back of the freezer. All the stuff that was ugly looking that didn't sell that week, they take the rest of it. So it's been sitting there a week, number one. They passed over it. So they got to put it in an all-you-can-eat kind of format or turn it into a salad so that you can't see the bad parts, right? So they throw all that stuff, and that's why you don't do it. Well, here's what a target date fund is in most cases. A target date fund in most companies is the buffet. It's the Sunday buffet for a mutual fund company, meaning that a lot of mutual fund companies in their target date fund, they put all the funds that nobody's buying and they put those together in a salad. And they have a manager that manages these managers to decide what allocation. So you got two problems. Number one is you got the funds that don't sell, so they're not high performers. And then the second thing that you have is you have a manager managing managers, which means you have two layers of expenses instead of one. Yeah. So you're paying additional fees. The third thing, and really, even if you can get by those, you're like, but Joe, it's easier. It's fine. What we really need in life, and most of us save too little and we start too late. Right. What most of us need in life is we need our money to double, right? This compounding interest. So let's think about this. Let's say that you're 25 years old and you have saved at 25 years old, you saved 10 grand. Like, that's fantastic. A lot of 25-year-olds don't do that. Right. So if we use, Alan, the rule of 72, the rule of 72, everybody, is this mathematical magical number that tells you how often your money is going to double. And it's fun to do with your 401k or whatever your things are. But you take the interest rate you think you're going to get, divide it into 72, and it's this magic equation that tells you how long it's going to take. So let's say it's 8%. So it's going to take 9 years. So this 25-year-old who saved 10 grand, their money's going to double every 9 years if they get 8. So it's going to double at 34, at 43, at 52, and at 61. So it's going to double 4 times. So they haven't really saved, if that money's for retirement, they haven't saved 10 grand, Alan. They've saved 20 with that first double, 40 with the second, 80 with the third, 160 with the fourth. So they've saved $160,000 is what they've really done. Yeah. So this power of compounding is huge. And what happens is a target date fund gets too conservative too soon. So that last double that turned it from 80 to 160, and think about if we had it one more time, 160 to 320. Yeah. You're landing the plane too soon and you don't get the last double. So even though it's, quote, easier, it's usually more expensive. Now, I got to do a couple caveats here. Please do not write me and say, but Joe, you're wrong about the fees. And the people that say that have one of a couple families. They either have like T. Rowe Price, Fidelity, or Vanguard, right? I'm not talking about those. Those families have wonderful target date products. So all the stuff I said about fees, you can forget about that. Yeah. But the world of finance is this big. And those 3 companies are here, right? I mean, there's so many bad ones. But even if you have the Vanguard product, the Fidelity product, the T. Rowe Price product, or one of the lower fee ones, you're still landing that plane too early, Alan. And I think it's about a half-hour thing to learn how to diversify this yourself using some index funds. And then once a year, rebalancing those to be the way that you want them to. It is so much easier than we think it is. Like, I think between our ears, we think it's going to be this complicated thing, and it totally is not. Yeah, I agree. Like, whenever someone says, wants to buy a house or something, they're like, I want to talk to my personal, finance planner first. I'm like, okay, I'd almost like to have that conversation, because a lot of times I have to
just explain real estate or whatever. But like the way you just explain mutual funds, it's like, you don't get that advice from other, certified.
No.
Person,
Well, and that's another frustration, right? Because you don't know who the advisor is.
Yeah.
So you don't know if they're really a salesperson
Yeah.
or an asset collector. And if they're an asset collector and you're telling them how to do real estate, the advisor can't have the real estate as an asset under management. So what happens if the advisor can't have it as an asset under management, you don't end up in it, because the advisor is really concerned with building their AUM and whatever fee they charge to get that done.
So for people listening, are you recommending not to get a certified financial planner? Is that your statement?
Actually, it's not what I'm saying at all, which is funny. It is,
Yeah.
but so here's the deal, especially in the fire community, you see people all the time say, "Hey, I fired my advisor."
Right.
That part I love.
Yeah.
And the reason I love that is because most people have abdicated the throne when it comes to their money to their advisor.
Yes. They figured it out themselves.
Yeah. They go, "Hey, I can't handle this. I'm going to hire somebody. They're going to take care of it. I'm going to meet with them twice a year. And I've abdicated. I have no responsibility for this anymore. Somebody else does."
Yeah.
That's not good. Like, think about that. And I'll give you an analogy of a company that I really have a lot of respect for, and a woman I have a lot of respect for, Alan, which is Mary Barra. Mary Barra is the CEO of General Motors, and GM is not the world's best stock or the world's greatest company, but the fact that she's kept them relevant at a time when so much is changing in automotive, and man, GM just keeps plugging along. And I'm just looking at what she did. You turning over your money to a financial planner and only showing up twice a year would be like Mary Barra coming in to work one day and going, "Okay, you guys handle this car thing, and 6 months from now we'll regroup and you tell me how we did building cars."
Right.
No,
right. Yeah.
Mary still goes to her version of Camp Fi, right? Mary still goes to the meetings. She still reads all the books. She knows all the stuff, but who are her advisors? And I think this is where advisors can be kick-ass. Her advisors are people that know more than she does, cover her blind spots so that she can go even. They make her smarter. So if your advisor is taking it away from you, you should fire them. Right. Because your advisor needs to be somebody that makes you a stronger person. So who does Mary surround herself with? She is these, she calls them not advisors, she calls them vice presidents, right? She got these vice presidents who are in charge of engineering, design, all these people that know far more than she does about the individual parts of the car, but she still knows everything about the car. And I think that's the type of relationship you need, where you're in control. And then, so fire the old advisor, hire advisors that make you smarter, and you stay on the throne.
Oh, I love that. So you're the decision maker. You surround yourself with a rock star team, maybe a real estate expert, a mutual fund expert, a crypto expert, whatnot. Everyone has their expertise. And then collectively, you're going to have the knowledge. And to me, it's fun. Like, a lot of people freeze at that, and they're like, I don't, that's too much pressure and that's too much stress. And to me, it's a game, right? It's like, all right, let's gamify this. How can we win this game? Or, well, first, what's the goal? Yeah.
You and I had this conversation because you and I think have something in common where we're not afraid of being the dumbest person in the room. I want to be the dumbest person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you had a great discussion with me about your relationship with Barbara Corcoran, right?
Yeah.
And being able to imagine being able to pick that woman's brain. But so many of us are so focused on, we have to be right and we have to feel knowledgeable, versus giving that away and going, "Hey, Alan, what don't I know? Like, please, what don't I know?" And if you go into these relationships going, "I need to know more than I know now, and I know there's gaps in my knowledge," like, how great is it to be able to ask that type of a question instead of having to feel like we're the know-it-all? Forget it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, that's why I like reading books and like Stacked. It's like, I didn't know that about mutual funds, target date. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. I gotta adjust my way of thinking there. Like, even when I do think I know something, I'm always going back and be like, do I really believe this still, with new information? And speaking of that, it's feeling dumb. And I feel like I've read hundreds of personal finance books. You introduced something to me that I also had not ever come across before. The Klontz money script.
Yes.
I put it on the screen here. Do you mind walking us through this and sort of, because I think this was something that's someone has to relate with one of these 4 money scripts.
Yeah, nope. And
Have
I'll introduce this. I'm glad you brought this up because we have 2 chapters in the book that deal with money mindset and problems. And they kind of feel like speed bumps in the book because we're generally going along tactically. And then we pull up to 10,000 feet and go, okay, here's what you need to do. All of us have these scripts in our head. We have these scripts running in our background, and they're largely things that come from when we were kids and the way that we treated money. So I'll give you an example. These are, and by the way, we call them the Klontz money scripts, and you should quantify your money, we joke about, because the guy's name is Brad Klontz. But another cool thing about Brad Klontz, awesome TikTok channel. Like if you're looking for behavioral economics on TikTok, get rid of some of the garbage crypto people and follow Brad Klontz because he is very funny. But so the 4 different scripts, and you could be a combination of these people. Number 1 is money avoidance. And this is a lot of people. We think that money is the root of all evil, right? And because money is the root of all evil, rich people are bad. It is somehow you're courageous and you're noble if you don't have any money. And if you can get by with having less all the time, then that somehow makes you better. And those people have to get over this fact that, you know what, money is not evil. It's the worship of money that is evil, which is the second piece. I know people, man, when I was a financial planner, these people drove me crazy. Money, Alan, was going to solve all their problems. If I just have more money, everything's better. Or, this deal where I can take it with me. Like if I have the most chips, I'm going to win. When I was going into finance, it was at the same time, this is like an old guy thing. It was the same time that Wall Street came out. And I remember Bud Fox, if you remember that movie, Bud Fox asking Gordon Gekko, how many yachts can you water ski behind? Because Gordon Gekko was just collecting money, right?
Right.
But if you realize you can't take it with you, money worship is something you don't want. So those 4 different things, you go back and you're like, where am I at? There are times when I'm money avoidant. Money status. Like I know there are people in my life, there are people who are very close to me that think that because they drive a nice car, that means I'm a hell of a human being.
Right.
But does it really? Is it the same? And then last is money vigilance, believes in saving money, disagrees with financial handouts, anxious and secretive, right? Money vigilance, or I can't tell anybody about my money. I can't have these talks. I can't, whatever. I'm going to be very, 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 very vigilant. And as you know, those are the people that have a lot of holes in their game and they'll never know. They will never, ever know. So those are a few money scripts that can seriously hinder your progress.
Yeah, no, I found that very interesting because I think, but again, it's not one size fits all. There's no blanket financial advice. But if you understand that if you're one of these 4 money scripts, the money avoidance, the money worship, the money status, the money vigilance, you can react differently to different financial advice. And self-reflection is so important. Self-reflection on how you spend money, where your budget is, talking to your spouse about money and how they're spending money, just sort of doing that look in the mirror sort of exercise, I think really helps.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It goes back to knowing you. And I'll give you an example, which is that, and I'm pulling out my wallet. I generally, you hear this advice, don't carry credit cards because of the fact that if you carry credit cards, you're going to spend money. Studies show that's most people. I'm exactly the opposite, Alan. I will never, ever, ever spend any of the money on any of the credit cards in my wallet. I won't.
Yeah.
I am very afraid. Every time I run the plastic, I feel guilty. I want to make sure I know where the money comes from. And this is weird because I never have money in my wallet, but right now I have $25 in my wallet. I will tell you right now, this money's gone in the next 48 hours. It is gone. Like when I have cash for me is not accountable. It is free money. I will waste it on crap. So for me, because I know that I'm the opposite of most people, I make sure I never have money in my wallet. And I found that helped me clean up. Like hiding money from myself was the way that we talk about this in the book. Automate everything. Like it's not about, it isn't about diligence or determination. Excuse me. It's about hiding money from setting up systems. So you cut the cord on cable, or you get a better cell phone plan. You get rid of, AT&T, you save $80 a month by doing that. That's one thing. But if you don't set up a system that automatically saves that $80 a month into some mutual fund or some account hidden from yourself, it just becomes lifestyle creep. Like I end up at the Sizzler buying everybody that shrimp on the Barbie special thing. Beers on me.
Sunday buffet. That's interesting. I never spend cash, and I never use my debit card. I put everything on a credit card. I think it may be, I mean, I do a lot of exercising of hiding money from myself, but to me, it's I earn honestly cryptocurrency, Bitcoin with every credit card purchase. So I've got a BlockFi credit card. And if that sounds exciting to anyone, go to my Linktree / the House of AC and you can get your own, and we both get $10. But to me, I want to, I guess I trust myself, because at the end of the month, every month, I pay off my credit card bill in full. And that's a little bit different, because that, talk about a wake up call. I'm not, checking in with myself $10 a day here for this lunch, or $20 because I bought that. But you look at a bill and it's like $10,000 at the end of the month, and you're like, what the hell did I spend that on, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You get that big wake up call, and I'm like, I don't want to have that conversation with myself by the end of the month. So, but I put everything on the same credit card. One, for that sort of shock value, and look in the mirror. Two, to hide it from myself a little bit, because I'm the same way. Cash is unaccountable. And three, well, I might as well let me earn a little, Bitcoin at the same time.
Absolutely,
it doesn't hurt, right?
If you're paying it off every month, absolutely.
Yeah.
Get the rewards. Yes.
Yeah. And which brings me to this. What are your thoughts on crypto? I didn't see any sort of deep dive or mention of that in your book Stacked. Yeah.
What's funny is we talk about play accounts a little bit in the back, but we really don't address crypto, which I've heard about from a couple of people. And the reason is we address all the background that leads you to crypto, because there's two different types of crypto investors. There are crypto investors and NFT investors that understand the technology, and they're betting on the future. These are people like my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law truly believes in the mission of these cryptocurrencies, and he's on board. And so he deals in crypto and knows all of it. There are other people who see it like the lottery, right? They see it like it's a lottery ticket, and I'm going to make I don't have to do any of this foundational stuff, Alan. I'm just going to invest in a few NFTs. Right. And obviously the media helps propagate that. There really is no the media, but stories that you read propagate that. Like I was reading a story last week about this couple, maybe people have seen this couple that was going to be evicted from their house. They sold a few NFTs, and they got, and they not only were able to pay their mortgage on time, which they didn't think they were going to be able to, but they also, ended up with a lot of money. Like, people read that stuff and they go, man, this is me. I'm just going to hit it big. Like, the number of crypto investors that aren't doing it for the right reason is astounding to me. So we don't spend in Stacked a lot of time in any individual asset class. Like, we don't spend a ton of time on real estate. We don't spend a lot of time in stocks. We don't spend a lot of time on cryptos. We don't spend a lot of time on other asset classes. What we do is we give you the foundation, so that when you know that, like I said before, you start with this many investment choices and you narrow to this, is crypto in that field? And the answer is yes or no. And I'll tell you where I come down. And my feeling about this changed a lot. Because if you listen to old Stacking Benjamins episodes, dude, you know that OG and I back in the day, we were not about crypto at all. We're like, really? Whatever. And then my opinion changed to, it's the Wild West. So I would wait for it to stabilize. I would make sure that things are much more stable, because you look at how people are getting smoked in Bitcoin, the last few months. Right. But my feeling there has changed, and it gets changed by my advisors and smart people around me like you, man. Yeah. And the reason is, and I love this, and this is Kevin Rose from Modern Finance first told me this, and I totally agree with Kevin. It's that the time when you're going to make big money is when there's high volatility. And this is the same thing from my chapter that we talked about earlier about strategic underdiversification. Right. You don't make money in your checking account for a reason. It's incredibly safe.
Yep.
The safer it is, the less chance there is to make money. So if your mission is to make a lot of money, you have to invest in some things that are more Wild West. That's why in the stock market, you go with small companies over large companies if you're trying to become wealthier. You have fewer companies versus more if you're trying to become wealthier. So if your goal is stability, like grandma, if grandma's goal is stability, you don't buy crypto.
Right. Right.
But if you're somebody that's looking at, this is the future, this is where we're headed, I think there's going to be more of this. You have to invest in it while it's the Wild West if you want to make the serious money. Now, that also comes with consequences, though, which
Yep.
when I look at it this way, I'm completely okay with it. Comes to consequence. Hey, if I'm wrong, I put money in it that I know is money that I can afford to lose. And by the way, that has become, and I slowed down on that last sentence for a reason. That argument's also changed. I think that there are some cryptos now where there is kind of a floor, like we know they're going to be around. Like Ethereum, I think is clearly going to be around.
Right.
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 Where
So much
4 years ago,
Yeah.
4 years ago, 5 years ago, we didn't know.
Right.
Like, are any of these going to be around? Now I'm like, okay, there is some degree of certainty now. But once again, I'm not going to make now that huge money in something like Ethereum. I mean, I could still make great money, but not like the hella wonderful days the last 4 years. Yeah.
Right.
So the safer it gets, the less Wild West it gets, the less upside you have. So that's kind of my fit, and on NFT world, as an extension of that, I think the technology is amazing, but I think there's a Beanie Baby, if you know that reference, the old Beanie Babies in the late 90s,
Yeah.
and everybody's collecting them, people holding the bag. I think that the 8-bit artwork is Beanie Babies. Somebody's going to get stuck holding worthless art, but crypto, but NFTs that show ownership of something, I think that's where the magic is, man.
So I think what you're describing is utility. Like there's NFTs that give you access to certain tools or resources or other NFTs or parties, or like there's a musician NFT and you get to have dinner with that musician, or you get royalties of the album from the things like that. Like I agree. It's if people who just evaluate it on the artwork and they're these pixelated things, I understand the turnoff there, but
well, and think about this, man, for what you do, proof of ownership of a piece of property.
Yeah.
NFT.
Oh yeah.
Like you have these property disputes, those are gone. Like that is gone. Nope. There is a set record in the blockchain that shows that I own this piece of property, period. Done.
Right. But and imagine that I can put whatever I want in that contract. I can say I can sell a house and say all future sales I get a 6% royalty because I was the owner who put this under NFT. And then if they might not ever sell the home, but if they sell it every 3 years, I'm like getting paid for it. Like you can do all sorts of cool stuff with it. I love it.
Yes.
It may devalue my home a little bit on the original sale because they're giving away 6% of the future profits, but I'll make that up in due time. I have no doubt. And this is where I get really excited about it. I'm always trying to marry these two worlds, real estate and crypto world. Is the Bitcoin? There's companies now that'll say, let's say you've got $1 million of Bitcoin, however you got there. You got it there, 4 years ago. You dollar cost average over the next 10 years. You've got $1 billion of Bitcoin. They will say you can buy a house based on the asset of that Bitcoin without selling your Bitcoin. And so what they do is say, you are going to put up collateral that $1 million of Bitcoin, and we will give you cash up to $1 million to go buy a house. And then, it's like an interest rate of like a mortgage, 4% or something. You go buy that house for $1 million in cash from that credit line. And you didn't have to sell any Bitcoin. So you've got two assets for the price of one, which is amazing. And then what's in it for the lender is the lender says, that the lender who's lending on your Bitcoin saying, well, if you default on this loan, I get your house and your Bitcoin. So I get double the collateral. Two, we can close in a day. We don't need to go through a mortgage process. We don't even need an appraisal because this lender's got double the assets that they're to collect on if you default. And As an investor, I'm like, well, that's great. Because most of the time when I have to buy real estate, I got to sell stocks. I got to, liquidate something in order to buy cash. Now cryptocurrency gives me an option where possibly I don't have to do that. I know that product exists a little bit, kind of like HELOCs, home equity line of credits. I know if you're extremely wealthy and you've got a great portfolio in stocks, you can get a credit line against that. But just to see that popping up in the crypto space really excites me and makes me want to.
I was going to say that widens it. That just widens the number of people that can participate. And think about all the middlemen too that are gone.
Oh yeah. Oh, 100%. The title attorneys don't need to be involved because of the NFT, like you described. Banks don't need to be involved. You can do business on a weekend. You don't have to wait Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, to send a wire and wait for the bank manager approval. And wow, it's just going to be, it's going to change the world. Yeah, for sure. And so I try to do a lot educating myself because it is the Wild West, and what I'm learning today, it may completely change tomorrow, but I just want to be exposed to it and understand it because I think it's going to have a huge impact on finance, and that's what we teach. Yeah.
Well, and that's a great topic too here for a second, a great place to pause, I think, because the best way to learn about something is to actually do it in a small degree. I feel like, when I first got involved with the stock market, I did some of these stock simulators but then when I put my own real money in it and your emotions start getting tied up in it, right? Emotion changes the game. So actually doing it makes you more curious. You're like, why did that happen? Why is Bitcoin down so damn much in the last few months? Like, what's really going on? You start looking behind the curtain and you find out all this extra information that you wouldn't have had if you didn't invest in it. So if you want to know anything, just dip your toe in it, find out. Like I know for me, I don't own any real estate outside my house anymore. I actually sold my real estate. And the reason is for me, once again, know yourself, not for me. My son is 26 years old and is buying his 10th and 11th rental properties.
I want to get him on the show. Let's get him on the show. Yes.
He's speaking my language. He is started. He's all about real estate. He loves it. He knows himself and he absolutely loves it. It's a great game and he's fascinated by it. And that's great. But by doing it, I know I didn't like it. I advocate for it. Yeah. I love it. You and I have talked about how great it can be. And my son obviously does it and I've helped him, but no, get in it and find out.
Right. Yeah. No, that I always give that same advice because a lot of people, I see these people who spend $30,000 on a weekend seminar to learn about real estate. And I was like, man, just take that $30,000 and that's, you can go buy $120,000 property with that. That's a down payment. And even if it goes to zero, you're going to learn more than you will in that weekend. But chances are it won't go to zero.
And also I was going to say, think about this, $120,000 house. Like the big mistake a lot of real estate investors make is that they invest in the high end properties.
Right.
And I think that's much more specialized where, it is much more, it is much less dependent on the economy if you stick in that $120,000 range.
Right.
Because people that are buying $120,000 houses, people that need a house, they need a clean house, they need you as a landlord to provide a good roof over their head. So it's a great place to win. And I feel like the risk is much, much less than if you go and try to rehab an $800,000 property.
Yeah. And there's to be successful in real estate, it's the buyer pool, the renter pool. There's way more buyers that can afford $120,000 house than a $500,000 house. Way more renters that can afford rent for $1,000 than $5,000. So it's sort of like your same analogy with a small cap stock investing or big cap, right? You go with the big boys, you just rely on the economy. If you go to the little guys, you're kind of investing in the underdog to become a big guy kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
that, by the way, that also is part of what my son likes. He's in a concentrated area. He only buys houses in Detroit.
Yeah.
It's because it's where he grew up and he knows Detroit. He lives in Seattle now, but he knows Detroit very, very well. And he keeps them in the same area. So he knows that economy, but what he's proud of? he's proud of, Alan, that he's part of the revitalization.
Yeah.
Like he's not only making money, but he's part of something special. And if you haven't been to Detroit lately, you've no idea.
Right.
There are some good people doing some really great work on that city, and it's really coming back nicely. But he gets super jazzed about being part of that. And so not only making money, but doing good for some people. Like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And I always, I hate to turn this into a real estate show, but it's where every conversation with me will always end up.
It's weird. You might be slightly passionate about it.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, you can be a good landlord at every price point. You don't have to be, just like there's good tenants at every price point. There's good people everywhere. To switch gears, Joe, I want to sort of pat you on the back a bit and say, I'm really impressed that you take a podcast from your mother's basement and you turn it into something that's syndicated across radio networks, like a real legit companies taking your podcast, your creation, and now it's syndicated. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How's that going and how that started? And
well, and thank you. And
yeah.
Well, and thank you for that. And to be clear, we're not on the radio. We are with a big radio conglomerate, but we're part of their podcast build out.
Got
it. And they distribute us in way more places than we can be distributed. And you'll hear ads for our show on radio stations all the time. People tell me in Atlanta and Chicago and LA that they hear ads for Stacking Benjamins, but that, yeah, I mean, if you're going to start a podcast, I think you have to have something to say. And my problem when we first started Stacking Benjamins, my co-host and I, was people kept telling me, I've been listening to podcasts since the beginning, by the way. One of my favorite podcasts, which is about board games, because I'm a nerd. There's games on that table right behind me there. Was a board game podcast. It was like one of the first 100 podcasts that were out. So I've been listening to them for a long time. I'd done radio. I'd done a lot of media for American Express. And people were like, "Oh, you really need a podcast." And I kept saying, I don't want to be Susie Orman. Yeah. I don't want to be Dave Ramsey. I don't even want to be Jim Cramer, where my head's turning red and I'm sell. I don't, there's none of that. That's me. And so one day I was mowing my lawn, and this advice, by the way, people want to take anything from this, and you're feeling it all creative, which I think we all need some creativity in our life. There's a great little book. It's a little book, but it's a powerful book by a guy named Austin Kleon, Kleon, and it's called Steal Like an Artist. And Steal Like an Artist says that if you're ever looking for inspiration, take things that are outside your normal realm and pay homage to it, remix it. Don't rip it off, because there's no joy in ripping it off, but make it your own, make it your thing. So I was mowing my lawn one day and I'm listening to these guys Click and Clack, which are NPR, and their show is called Car Talk.
Yeah.
Right. And I realized, Alan, I'm not learning crap about a car. Like I'm learning, I diligently would listen to the show and I would learn so little about a car. But what I did find was that now, whenever I read any automotive stuff or automotive publications, or I was diving into, I'd see something about cars on TV, I was much more interested because of the fact that I listened to Car Talk. So it was this wonderful introduction. And I thought, and that show is kind of campy. And they have this show's brought to you by Dewey, Cheatham and Howe law firm.
I mean, that is it just had an aha moment. That's exactly Stacking Benjamins is Car Talk. Like I remember no one in my family is a car person, and we could care less about cars, but we would listen to that every weekend just in the radio in our house. I don't know why. Like we just were giggling at the brothers talking. I think they were brothers, right? And they're making, does your sound, car sound like click, 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 yeah, right. They've been doing all the sound effects. And it's like, oh no, that's okay. We know why he's making that sound. And but that's you. You've got all the bells and whistles. You got good transitions. It just as soon as you may be talking about a subject that's like, oh, that's not of interest to me on the Stacking Benjamins podcast. You immediately as soon as I possibly have that thought, you switch and you're talking about a new subject, and I'm now re-engaged and re-excited. So I don't know if you've got like time limits for each segment or how you work through that.
Very close. We try to keep the show to 60 minutes. It's always 70 because we're having fun.
Yeah,
So it's
right.
always 10 minutes longer than we want, but it's no longer 90. We fixed that.
Yeah.
Because even though we could have fun for 90 minutes, it's hard for people to get that kind of time. And while I'm not a completionist, I think a lot of people are,
Right.
and they were, we published 3 times a week. So people were falling behind. So we cut the show length, but I have ADD. I have given myself a bunch of workarounds, almost like we talked about, you and I with not carrying cash. I have lots of things that I do to keep me focused and keep me on task and make sure that I get the job done. I've noticed that I listen to podcasts, once again, Steal Like an Artist, that those podcasts I listened to had segments. And what I really like as a guy with ADD is that if I don't like a topic, I can just fast forward to the next one.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, so, make it magazine style for somebody like me. So, anybody that's creative, make something that you want. So this was something that didn't exist. And it was what I wanted because I love car talk and I love money geekery and discussion. So we did that. And then people often ask about my mom's basement, and that came from, it's funny because people will often tell me, they're like, oh, you guys were, the old movie Wayne's World. Like, you guys are doing Wayne's World, or the old SNL skit Wayne's World. I'm like, no, I'm way too geeky for that. What we were really doing with my mom's basement is doing, there was this show on XM Kids. And as I mentioned, my twins are 26, but when they were like 8 and 10 years old, we'd listen to this show called Absolutely Mindy. And Mindy on XM Kids, and she still is on the radio. Mindy, the thing is, she's grounded and she's supposed to be cleaning her room, but instead has a hairbrush as a microphone, and she's having all her friends call into her satellite radio show that's completely imaginary.
Right.
And I thought, how fun would it be? First of all, and I hate to pull the veil back for everybody, but first of all, there's so many inside jokes. There are no basements in Texarkana, Texas. The ground is clay. And so everybody's got a house on a slide. There's no such thing. The second inside joke is every damn podcaster is pretending like they're not in mom's basement, right? It's like, no, I'm super professional. No, you're not. You're in your mom's basement. And so we thought if we own that from the very beginning that we're in mom's basement. And the third thing, I'm a former financial planner. My co-host OG which is another inside joke, because he wanted to talk bluntly about money. So he didn't want to use his real name. He's findable. It's easy to find out who he is for compliance reasons and all that stuff. But he just wanted to be kind of like that magician with a bag over his head, so he could tell you what's really going on in financial planners' heads. And so he's like, okay, you can be Joe, because I'm no longer a financial planner, but who am I? And I'm like, well, you'll be the other guy. We'll just call you the other guy. And then we realized the other guy is OG, like Original Gangsta.
Oh, yeah.
So my co-host is just the other guy, or OG, which, it's also Original Gangsta. But the third thing was, I feel like a lot of times when you're a subject expert, what I see in the space, especially the finance space, is a lot of the people that need the expert opinion, they don't trust the expert because they're always looking for the ulterior motive, and they're looking for, what's a CFP and a former planner? What are they going to, that sounds nerdy. I don't want anything to do with that. Right. So it was also this pushback against the fact that we know what the hell we're talking about. And instead we're going to try to make it fun so that you ignore the fact that we actually are two people that have been around a long time and might know something about this stuff.
Yeah. Well, and you've told a good story before about one of my other favorite podcasters, Roman Mars, and how he had a big influence in you. And can you kind of walk us through, so maybe those who want to start their own podcast? But I think this is a bigger story there. It's not just, it could be applied to any career that someone's kind of going after.
Oh, absolutely. Our career was going okay, or the podcast rather was going okay. Not really a career, more me, us having fun, but the podcast was going okay. And it was kind of growing a little bit. And the first lesson is go to these, whatever your thing is that you do, go to industry conferences. And the reason is same thing as you and I were talking about earlier. You'll find out all the stuff you don't know. Right. You once again, go there with an open mind and go, there's a bunch of stuff I don't know. These people got it. Let's go. And the second thing is you also find it's about knowing people. Right. You and I had a discussion, and neither of us really have the bandwidth to do it, but we had a discussion, you and I, about maybe doing Stacking Benjamin's real estate show together. Right. And I would still love to do that.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is who you know and making sure that you know some of these people. But anyway, so those are a couple of quick lessons.
Yeah.
But the podcast was growing okay, but I thought that we were pretty damn professional. I thought we were doing things very, very well. And Roman Mars was one of the top speakers at this conference. He's got a wonderful podcast for people who don't know him called 99% Invisible, about all this great design around you that you don't ever see.
Right.
This fantastic. And he's got the voice. Oh my.
Yeah.
This is 99% Invisible. I'm Roman Mars. Yes, he's amazing. But anyway, I have a real man crush on Roman Mars.
Yeah.
But he showed us his process, and his process was a 5-week production schedule where they started off with this highbrow idea of where we're going. Then they find the guest to fit. What do? I usually go, I used to go find a guest. I would go find a guest and then I'd organize the show around. Nope. He starts off with, what do I want to teach? Then he finds the expert in that area, and then they design the show around that. And each week they have different parts of the thing. So it becomes much more of a machine.
Yeah.
And then for the show, he listens to every episode and gives it the thumb up. I wasn't listening to the end product. I was outsourcing it to somebody else. And I was sitting next to a guy, I think, Alan, that you know, Roger Whitney, the retirement answer man. He and I were sitting in the front row. And I'm kind of competitive. And I used to have all this stank around people that their podcasts were rated higher than mine. And I'm like, well, my show's better than theirs. My show's better than theirs. My show's better than theirs. And you know what? There's always going to be a few of those.
Right.
But I wrote down, when I saw Roman versus me, I wrote, you have the ranking you deserve. Because by and large, he's kicking my ass. Yep. He's doing things that I'm not even thinking about. And I think I'm professional.
Right.
The second thing that he did was he has this feeling that of continuous improvement. And no matter where you're at, that you're always trying to do things better. And I think the quote that you're talking about that really hit me hard was this one. And I have definitely internalized this. He said, I'm embarrassed by the shows that I made a year ago. Those embarrassed, like I hear those and I'm so embarrassed. He goes, and I hope that 12 months from now, I'm embarrassed by the shows I'm making now. That's my goal, is to be embarrassed. And it is super powerful. And I even see, I see that we got this show coming up that is so damn funny. And it's something we haven't tried before. Which that excites me. If there's something that we haven't tried and we're going in a different direction, hey, let's throw it against the wall and see if it works or not. I actually learned that from just one more little segue here in my rant. You said Roman Mars, and now I'm off and running.
Yeah, well, it worked. It had an effect on you because your show is amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the last thing I'll say is this, which is, we've studied comedy now for a long time. This is another thing that I learned at that same conference, is that, we were two guys that knew a lot about finance, but we had never studied comedy. And while there's still people that say they don't think I'm funny now, it's a subset of the people that said it back then. Right. And I realized that I just thought I could turn on a microphone and try to be Joe funny guy because I'm funny with my friends. You can't be. Yeah. You have to study the craft. And now I'm studying the craft of comedy all the time. And guess what? There's still people who don't think I'm funny, but that's fine.
You can't win them all.
But yes, but there is a statistic that's really interesting if you're trying something which is comedy. So there's two types of people. There are people that think that they're funny, and there's people who don't think they're funny. Studies show that the people who think they're funny are actually not funnier than the people who don't think they're funny. The difference is comedians tell more jokes per minute than non-comedians, and they don't give up. So if you watch, as an example, if you watch SNL, how many episodes of SNL do you go, you're like, that's not funny. Right. But you and I can quote all these SNL skits over the years that are hilarious. And so SNL in an episode might hit it once in a 90-minute period, maybe once.
Yeah.
But if you take them over a long period of time, people like SNL, oh, that's been funny as hell. That's funny. When I'd say 85% of the time, they're not. They're not.
That's
funny.
hilarious. You just made me think of this story in high school. So I was the class clown in high school, voted all that.
You
That was like my
shock.
goal. That was
Very
like,
much a shock.
that was all I wanted to accomplish in high school, and I did it. To the dismay of my parents. But one of my classmates, Ben Sandin, I remember this. He came up to me and he's like, Alan, you're not that funny, but you say so much that you eventually will say funny things. And and I was like, I'll take it. Yeah, sure, whatever works.
That's fabulous.
Joke until something lands. I won't give up. Right.
That's so damn funny. Yes. Yes. Just keep throwing it out there. Right.
Yeah, and you apply that to any craft, like whatever it is, whatever you're working on, whatever you're hustling, whatever your side project is, whatever you want to do as a career. I'd take that and just throw it at the wall, see what works, see what doesn't, revise and be embarrassed by it a year later and plan.
Well, can I give people another analogy? And this is about real estate. So you'll appreciate this.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So we bought this house that we live in now, and there's and I knew it was fully disclosed that, thanks Josh, there's it was fully disclosed that the sprinkler system's a mess, right? Big deal. I had a sprinkler system at my old house, and fine. That's a fixable, easy thing. And so no big deal there. But the thing I wasn't familiar with, because I haven't had a well before, is the house is on city water, but there's a well that runs the irrigation for the sprinkler system. The last like 3 weeks, my house is on a hill. There's been water pouring down the side of the hill from this well.
Yeah. I
had no idea who to call. Right. I had no idea who to call. And I've owned rental real estate, but it's always been on city water.
Right.
So who did I call first? I called a plumber. Yeah. The second I said the word well, the plumber goes, I'm out. You got to call a well person. And so I'm like, really? There's a difference between, yes, there's a difference between the two. So, all right, call a well person.
Baby Jessica.
So then what's that?
Remember baby Jessica? I think she was in Texas. Oh no, she fell down a well in like the 90s.
That's
Sorry. I don't, when you said well person, that's the only thing that came to mind. Yeah.
Yes. Call somebody that works on wells.
Yeah.
And so I called a well person. They came today, and this dude just tracks where the water's coming from. And there's like a hole in the ground, and he takes a little shovel. He asked me if it's all right. Yeah, sure. It's all right. He digs like this far, dude. He sticks his hand down there, and he's like, the problem's not your well. The problem is that your power's on. So the well's operating, and there's water pumping out of this broken couplet from your sprinkler system. So this is a sprinkler system problem, not a well problem.
Yeah, right.
And it's because of the fact that we had a storm come through, and when I reset the fuse, I accidentally turned on the well that wasn't pumping to the broken stuff. And so I caused it. $141, by the way. Yeah. $141 for a dude to come to my house today. But you know what? So this is the point that you and I have been talking about this last hour. Yeah. That will never happen again. Right. I mean, now I know about, okay, where to start, what to do, and where that is. But it was $140 lesson, which in the big scheme of things,
right? Yeah,
I would have rather not paid $140, but now for the rest of my life.
Yeah. And kudos to the well guy for solving something that's not well related. Like he's
right.
He's diversifying his education as well.
That's right. Yeah, at my expense. I mean, he made and by the way, for people that don't think being in trades is awesome, get this. People pay for 4, 6, 8 years of college. This dude made $140 while he was learning about sprinkler systems from me.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, I'll leave you with one last comment here. TJ from YouTube says, if I ever make it on the Stacky Benjamin show, I'll tell you a story of how I almost blew up my house by lighting the septic tank on fire. That's got to be a crazy story. Yeah.
TJ, Karen and I, our producer, Karen and I are planning another potpourri episode. I don't know if you've been listening for a while, where we have stackers on the show. We generally have like 3. We're planning one of those. So if you either DM me in the basement or shoot me an email, joe@stackybenjamins.com, that sounds like a story I want to hear. That's another key too, Alan. If anybody wants to get into podcasting, have interviews of stuff that you want to hear, have people on with stories that you want to hear. I'm very interested in stories much more than lessons. I feel like the lessons come from the stories. So this is how Alan and I met, is that I heard your story about gamifying your bills. Like, and I'd never heard anybody do that before. And I'm like, I got to talk to this guy, because I heard you with Scott and Mindy in the Bigger Pockets team, talking about you and how, Joe, you got to hear this story. So it's, this is stacker humor right here.
Yeah.
Happening.
Josh commented that's some really hot shit. Yeah.
You can tell the stackers are in the house now.
Yeah. Well, I remember you said to me, you like having authors on your show because they know how to put their stories into words or their, explain their story pretty well. And that, I got a taste of that with you. Now I think you're the first author I've had on my show. So I'm like, yeah, let's get more authors. So,
but I really like just stories I haven't heard. Yeah. And I also believe that, one thing I don't like doing, so I like polling my audience, but I like doing it afterwards. I feel like it's my responsibility to lead my audience to the places where I want to go, but then I poll them about, was I successful or not? Is this someplace we should have been? But I feel like if I'm doing it for my audience and not doing it for me, if I'm having people on the show and I'm not enthused about it, like, how great's the show going to be? It's not going to be good.
Yeah.
Which is why we do so many financially adjacent topics. We'll talk about, we talked to Daniel Lamar, who is the longtime CEO of Cirque du Soleil, a couple of weeks ago. Like that episode about creativity, you think an investing show and creativity?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
no, it all works together. I mean, I love taking it from different disciplines and areas and applying it to what I'm doing. I think that's just being well-rounded and learning new things.
By the way, a fun stacker you've had on the show, an audience member, both of ours, Christine Patane, you had on.
Yeah, Patany. Yeah, Christine Patany.
Or Patany. I always pronounce Christine. I always pronounce your name wrong. Christine and I met in Boston. We were doing a meetup in Boston, and what a cool person.
Oh, I didn't realize she was on your show. I'll have to check that one out. That's awesome.
She hasn't been on my show. She just
okay.
Yeah, she just listens, and we met in Boston, and we've had lots of correspondence back and forth.
I mean, this is what I just do, new shit, and crazy things happen. Doors open, you meet crazy people and great people. And like, I always say, my book is not like a money maker. It's the best business card I could ever have. It opens doors, it gets me in meetings, it gets me on podcasts, and the people I meet and the paths that have opened up to me that I could not predict are quite amazing. So just get out there, get out of your comfort zone and do you. And Joe, I hate to do this. I want to talk to you for another 5 hours, but I've got to wrap up the show. I try to keep it under a minute, and we're at under an hour. We're at 70 minutes. Ran into the same problem that you always have. So if anyone wants to follow you, you want to shout out Stacking Benjamins, your book Stacked, anything else you promote? Yeah.
No, the cool thing is that even if you've listened to our show, you might not know that we have a fantastic newsletter called the 201. We have a CFP Brooke Miller who writes 90% of it, and then I write 10%. Generally, I'm just adding some humor to it, but it is comprehensive. It's all the things that we can't get on the show, like all the depth of knowledge that comes behind it. So to get our newsletter, stackingbenjamins.com/201. But what that'll also do, Alan, is that we are going around the country with Stacked. I'm doing a 40-city book tour just to come meet a bunch of people. So to find out if I'm coming to your city, stackingbenjamins.com/stacked. Or if you subscribe to the 201, I'll also have it in there, like where all the cities I'll be coming to. And obviously it's all free. You can unsubscribe at any time, but frankly, unbiased money advice. I want more of that.
Okay.
So
well, let me know if you come through Atlanta, and
we are.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's where I'm based. So let's meet up when you're in town.
Well, and you know what's cool? I already know a few people that are going to be in Atlanta too. Okay. So it's funny that you say that because Julian Saunders from Rich and Regular is going to hang out with us. Bo Henderson from Your Rich Life Financial Planning will be there. Joel and Matt from How to Money will be there. Hopefully we can get Mark Deal there, who is just a great guy in Atlanta. There's so many fun, and I know I'm forgetting people. Jesse Fearon, who's in Woodstock, not that far away.
No, well, Alan Corey will be there. So let's make it happen.
Awesome.
For some reason, Atlanta has a lot of, it grows a lot of personal finance sort of talkers. So great city for that.
It's exciting. And in the next 2 days, I'll know where we're going to be. And it's
Okay.
it's a microbrewery. It's north of town. I don't have the name in front of me, but it's right off the highway. So it should be easy to get to, but I don't have that confirmed yet. I'll have
Sure.
that confirmed in the next couple of days.
Okay. Well, check it out, guys. Stacking Benjamins is a great website to get all that information. Joe, Saul-Sehy, thank you so much. You're always a pleasure, and hope to have you back on the House of AC sometime soon.
Thanks a lot, brother. And likewise, we got to get you back in the basement.
All right. Love it. Say hi to your mom for me.
See you later, kid.